Good morning. This is To The Point on GBNews with me, Mercy Moroki, and Bev Turner on your TV, radio and online.
We are with you today for just 1 hour with all the day's top stories before we hand over the reins to GB News' very own Dame Arlene Foster. She's going to be presenting a special show from Armagh covering the 12th of July celebrations across Northern Ireland.
Yes, and you can catch those from 11. Catch coverage on that from here on GB News. But in the meantime, we'd love to hear your views this morning, so do email in at gbviews@gbnews.uk. We'll read them out throughout the show. But to kick off, here's the latest headlines.
A very good morning. It's just 1 minute past 10. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date on GB News. The country will have a new Prime Minister by the 5th of September, with voting opening for the new Conservative Party leader tomorrow. Nominations open today and close at 6 p.m, with each candidate vying for the job needing at least 20 supporters. Well, ballots of Conservative MPs later this week will whittle down the candidates until there are 2 remaining. The final pair will then face a series of hustings before Conservative Party members choose a new leader. The Labour Party have said it'll put forward a motion of no confidence in Boris Johnson's government today. The opposition have repeatedly said that Boris Johnson should have left Number 10 immediately after he resigned as Tory leader last week. If the vote goes ahead, all MPs can vote on whether the Conservatives stay in power. If the government loses, it could trigger a national election. Well, Conservative candidates are getting ready to present their pitches to the party. Rishi Sunak will promise to cut taxes as he launches the next stage of his leadership campaign later today. The former Chancellor will say he has a plan to deal with the economic headwinds the country's facing, but only once inflation has been brought under control. But Brexit Minister Jacob Rees-Mogg has described him as a socialist Chancellor who put up taxes whilst failing to curb inflation. The Shadow Financial Secretary, James Murray, told GB News that Rishi Sunak's pitch lacks credibility.
The problem is that Rishi Sunak lacks any credibility when he talks about tax cuts. You know, he's been talking for several months about his desire to cut taxes, but I think people looking at him will look at his record and look at what he's actually done in office, which is to raise taxes on working people right in the middle of a cost of living crisis.
Another candidate, Tom Tugendhat, says tax cuts can't be the only way to stimulate economic growth. In his speech later today, the backbencher will set out his 10-year plan for growth, saying the UK needs investment in skills and infrastructure. The former Foreign Secretary, Jeremy Hunt, is promising to increase defence spending, whilst the Chancellor, Nadhim Zahawi, has highlighted his role in the vaccine programme as part of his campaign video. Well, Conservative MP Chris Green said there was a need to restore confidence in politics.
I think politics, whether it's the leadership at the moment in terms of government or Parliament as a whole, is mired. It's in a really bad place, and I think the country is losing confidence in our politicians.
In other news now, the government has announced a £1 billion plan to rebuild 61 schools. In James Cleverly's first announcement as the new Education Secretary, he said schools would receive state-of-the-art refurbishments. The investment will provide thousands of pupils with modern classrooms, as well as new sports halls, music rooms and science labs as part of the scheme. MPs have voted to allow agency workers to replace striking rail staff. It comes after train drivers at 8 rail companies voted to take industrial action in a dispute over pay. The ASLEF union says strikes are the last resort, but they had been forced to act due to the rising cost of living. Staff are expected to walk out this summer. The Department for Transport spokesperson called the decision disappointing and urged union bosses to find a solution. Mo Farah has revealed he was brought to the UK illegally as a child and was forced to work as a domestic servant. In a new documentary called The Real Mo Farah, the Olympic champion says he was smuggled here at the age of 9 under the name of another child. He said the show has now enabled him to address and learn more about where he's come from and his journey to Britain. The Mayor of London has described Mo as a truly great Briton. The England women's football team beat Norway yesterday in the biggest win ever recorded in the competition. Winning 8-0 in front of a crowd of almost 30,000, the Lionesses scored 6 times in the first half and twice in the second. The win sends them to the quarter-finals next Wednesday. The Met Office has issued an amber alert for extreme heat this weekend. The alert covers most of England and parts of Wales, warning of possible dangers to life or serious illness from heat, as well as disruption to travel. This week could see the hottest weather ever recorded in the UK. This is GB News, and I'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's head back to the point.
Good morning. You're watching and listening to myself, Mercy Moriki, and Bev Turner. We're on your TV, radio and online. Here's what's coming up.
Thousands of people will be marching in locations across Northern Ireland today to mark the 12th of July, the annual celebration of the Battle of the Boyne. GB News will be covering the parades today live from County Armagh with our very own Dame Arlene Foster from 11 onwards.
Yes, meanwhile, back in Westminster, the race for the top job kicks off today with initial nominations closing today and the first ballot taking place tomorrow afternoon. The new leader will be announced on the 5th of September. We'll be joined by our political correspondent, Tom Harwood, to tell you what you can expect.
And finally, we're going to be joined by a GP as we discuss all things respiratory health. With COVID cases rising, 1 in 5 people with asthma are using the wrong inhaler. And the number of children who are vaping, don't get me started, has doubled. So what can we do to keep our lungs healthy? More on that later.
That is all coming up and much more as well. Across the next hour, a bit of a shorter show today, but you can still get your views in GB Views at gbnews.uk, and we'll read some throughout the next hour.
OK, let's start with the Tory leadership race. It is well underway, of course, 11 candidates so far declaring that they will be standing.
Yes, and a timetable has now been announced. Hopefuls will be whittled down to 2 by Thursday, 3 ballots of Conservative members of Parliament, and we will know who the new Prime Minister will be on the 5th of September.
Feels like a bit of a long wait, that, doesn't it, the 5th of September? OK, let's take a quick look at the contenders. Former Equalities Minister Kemi Badenoch.
Yes, you've got Attorney General Suella Braverman.
Newly appointed Foreign Office Minister Raymond Chisty. We had no idea who he was until about 3 o'clock yesterday afternoon, was it? Or was it the day before?
Still not sure I do.
I've lost track of time.
Former Health Secretary and current Chair of the Health and Social Care Select Committee in Parliament, Jeremy Hunt.
Another former Health Secretary, Sajid Javid, of course.
Yes, Trade Minister Penny Mordaunt, who is top 2, I think, at the moment.
That's right. She's doing well, actually. Transport Secretary Grant Shapps.
Yes, and former Chancellor, who you all know, Rishi Sunak.
Foreign Secretary Liz Truss, one of the other women in the running.
Yes, and backbencher and Chair of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, Tom Tugendhat.
And newly appointed Chancellor of the Exchequer, Nadeem Zahawi.
Yes, well, with us to discuss this further is Sean Worth, former Downing Street advisor and political commentator. Sean, what are your thoughts on what's going to happen over the next couple of days? It's extraordinary that by Thursday we will have the final 2.
Yeah, I think it's going to be ferocious, actually, over the next couple of days, because we've got to get a big field of candidates down to only 2. And you've seen this morning that Nadine Dorries has done a big sit-down interview, basically poisoning the well for the Chancellor. I think we'll get a lot more of that.
OK. Sorry, Sean. We're struggling to hear you just a little bit there. You were very quiet in our ears, but I think we probably got an idea of what you said. We're going to narrow it down to the last 2 by tomorrow or by Thursday.
Yeah.
By Thursday.
Yeah.
It's obviously going to be Rishi Sunak and what, Liz Truss?
Yeah, I was just saying it's going to be really ferocious because you've got a lot of new faces actually, but the front runners do look like Rishi Sunak and Penny Mordaunt at the moment. 2 very different candidates actually. One the clear favourite, Rishi Sunak, but Penny's less well known but coming through. But then you've got people like Tom Tugendhat who are kind of going on a clean slate platform. His leadership bid launches formally today with a big launch at 11. And then you've got candidates like Kemi Badenoch, who no one really has heard of before, and some other ones that no one will know of. So I think we've got a really big, diverse field, really interesting. But yeah, it's going to be like rats in the sack over the next couple of days till they get down to the final two.
I think rats in the sack is the perfect metaphor, actually, Sean, because there's a lot of this which is deeply unedifying, isn't it? Because these guys have all been working together as a team for years in some cases. Now they're spending almost like a week just throwing knives at each other and daggers at each other, and then in a few days' time they've all got to be back on the same team again. Is there any way that politics could work without this system, which leaves a lot of us lay people feeling quite nauseous, actually?
Well, I'm afraid not. 'Cause at the moment, it's just that, you know, the electorate, if you like, that they're talking to are largely their colleagues, the other MPs. So yes, they are poisoning each other. They're saying that this person won't deliver tax cuts, or this person's a socialist, and that one will be soft on immigration. So you'll get a lot of that, because remember, campaigning, you know, you've got to set out a positive vision, but negative campaigning, as we've seen in general elections, really powerful. So I'm sure we're going to get a lot more of that. But when it comes to the membership, that's the Conservative Party membership, people will have to set out definitely a more positive stall, as you say. They'll have to be saying how they'll pay for all these tax cuts they're promising us all. And also there'll be a lot of questions about whether people will deliver on Brexit if they previously voted Remain, which a number of the candidates have done. So it's going to get really interesting.
Yeah. If it is, the final two will be Rishi Sunak, which, let's be honest, he will be most likely if we're to believe what's being said at the moment. And if it's Penny Mordaunt or Liz Truss, just talk to us a little bit about how extraordinary that, again, it's not Labour producing these ethnic minority and female leaders. It seems to always be the Conservatives who are actually almost better at doing diversity on this front.
Yeah, well, leading figures of the left have been shouting about how racist and misogynistic the Conservative Party is. Jolyon Moylan, who's a millionaire barrister who's basically a shill for the Labour Party, tweeted at Rishi Sunak saying, "Can a brown man really succeed in your party?" You know, the guy already has succeeded, he has a 27,000 majority in his own seat. All of the, there's no quotas, none of that in the Conservative Party. It's there on merit that you're being put through. And what a diverse field of candidates we've got in this election. So completely proving all those old tropes about the Conservative Party being the racist party or the misogynistic party. I don't see any other parties bringing as many people of colour to the front of this, or women. You know, four out of the five top on the members' poll last night, 4 out of the 5 candidates that members would like to see Prime Minister were women. Conservative Party has been the only party that's delivered women Prime Ministers. So, I think people are just getting sick of all that and just don't believe it at all.
You know, one of the people that I think we were quite surprised to see step out of the race very early on was Ben Wallace, actually, because he's incredibly popular with the grassroots Tory members. Why did he step away from the arena, Sean? Do you know?
I don't know, actually. I don't know. He's one of the people I don't know personally at all. I can only think that there's either something, I don't know if there's some policy reason or personal reason that he doesn't want to have aired in the laundry coming out in public, so to speak. You do get put on a huge amount of scrutiny, so does your family. People will be camping outside his house if he's in the final two. It does get pretty brutal for you, and not everybody's up to that. And I think that wherever it is, he's a serious figure, and I'm sure he'll feature in anyone's government. The positive thing from not taking sides so early on, and you're a big figure and big favourite figure like he is, that you can pretty much work with anybody. So, if you're a Jacob Rees-Mogg or Nadine Dorries right now, it's pretty clear you're not going to get a job in a Rishi Sunak government. But keeping your hands clean, so to speak, you can appeal to everybody and get a senior job.
Yeah, can I just ask, who do you think that it's one thing who the Conservative MPs and who the Conservative Party membership think should be Prime Minister, and it's another thing who the country will want to be Prime Minister? I just wondered who you personally think could be that person, because at the moment there's a poll that came out yesterday from Savanta Comrades showing Labour have a 15-point lead. Who's going to overturn that?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, actually, the process looks a bit mad at the moment, but the further along it goes, you will see that concern exactly as you say it. coming to the front. And remember the leadership election that produced David Cameron and Margaret Thatcher, actually, those guys weren't front runners, but they were looked at as the best people to perhaps connect beyond the traditional Tory vote. We certainly want to see that. And I think Rishi Sunak, Tom Tugendhat, Penny Mordaunt, any of those sort of more mainstream moderate views, they will appeal very widely. Kemi Badenoch, I think, is really appealing, though not very well known. But the more right-wing figures, perhaps not so much. And it'd be interesting to see what the party membership wants. Do they want somebody chucking out red meat and tax cuts and all that? Whether or not they can pay for them, we'll see. Or do they want somebody who can, keep hold of that red wall, which is really important? Those seats that the Tories won off of Labour in 2019 in an unprecedented victory. Can they keep hold of them? I think we'll see the latter. Who can appeal most to the voters?
So we find out in a couple of days who the final two are. That goes then to the Conservative Party members to vote, and we don't get the result until the 5th of September. Is that normal procedure, Sean? I know, obviously, we've got the Westminster recess, and so not a lot will be happening. Presumably, somebody's going to be carrying on running the country. So what happens then in September? Does the new Prime Minister literally move into 10 Downing Street as Boris Johnson slings his hook?
Exactly that, yeah. So the reason that there's such a short campaign right now to select the two is because it's only being voted on by MPs, and frankly they're all in the same place, they all know each other really well, and so that can be done pretty quickly. The reason there's quite a big gap is that a lot of the electorate, maybe don't even know a great deal about the candidates that are running, so that you need to have time to run a proper campaign. You have to do hustings, you have to do media rounds, there have to be leaflets, there's an on-the-ground campaign with Conservative Party members. So that the thinking is you need at least 4 weeks to run through all that. Typically, historically, it's been about 4 to 6 weeks for this stage of the campaign. But then, yes, exactly that. You're unceremoniously booted out of Downing Street. A load of staff come in and clean everything out, and then the new Prime Minister moves in the next morning, and you'll see them in front of the Downing Street door, ready to go in. Of course, they'd have moved some of their effects in and stuff, but there'd be a photo opportunity where they sort of first go in, normally their family and some of the staff. So, yeah, it will change very, very quickly.
OK, and just very finally, obviously the conversation has changed from will Boris Johnson resign, which is the conversation we were having a week or so ago, to now looking at these leadership candidates. What do you think is Boris Johnson's future, basically? What will he be thinking about going on to? Because it does still have a lot of support amongst the general public.
Yeah, and I reckon he'll make an absolute fortune doing speeches and TV and all sorts of stuff. I wouldn't worry about his personal finances, he can rebuild his reputation, I think. Yeah, he is a popular character, but he's just somebody that people didn't think had the right qualities for the top job. I actually think it's a bit unfair. He had a terrible team around him, and he was a great asset to the Conservative Party in terms of campaigning, but not a technocrat, not a manager. He didn't know anything about HR, all the things that you've got to have, and you've got to have really good people around you. And the team that he put around him, is testament to the fact that he doesn't do that sort of detail, and that was his undoing. But I still think he's popular. At the height of Partygate, I remember him going around doing the by-elections, and he was mobbed, and in a way no other politician is. So I think he's going to have a perfectly adequate future, especially financially.
That Boris Johnson will have to be very careful what he does after he leaves Downing Street, because there is already a lot of people, the Partygate left a very bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. Having 2 ethics advisors resign was not a good look. And people will always see Boris Johnson as such an emblematic figure of the Conservative Party that if he doesn't keep a slightly low profile between now and the next general election, he could be the undoing of whoever is Prime Minister, because his shadow casts so long, doesn't it, over the party?
Yeah, you wouldn't want him getting involved in the campaign. It's a bit like Mrs. Thatcher. She was very popular with a lot of the country, but she obviously got kicked out by her own party and stabbed in the back and all the rest of it. A bit like Johnson's getting now. And she was seen as very toxic in terms of coming in and getting involved in election campaigns. Not just the first one that she she was out of, so to speak, but also subsequent ones with William Hague and David Cameron. Michael Howard didn't want her in the campaign, I remember, but she was a grandee of the party and still very welcome at all the events and conference. I'm sure that's the same with Johnson. He'll lay a bit of a low profile, probably write a book which will do fantastically well, and then get out on that speaking tour, especially to the US, and he'll do really well. And then he's kind of out of the UK and out of the picture.
Yeah, well, maybe he'll finally write that book on Shakespeare. I think he wanted to write a couple of years ago. Sean Worth, thank you for joining us. Thank you for your time this morning. Former Downing Street advisor and political commentator.
I think what I meant as well about Boris Johnson's shadow casting long over the Conservative Party is that it's not just about who he supports in the next general election. It's literally about what he goes and does.
Yeah.
You know, if he goes and, well, he will make a fortune. If he's going and doing corporate speeches at Pfizer every second day,
more, I reckon,
the public are going to be so annoyed.
He'll make more from a few speeches than he earns for his prime ministerial salary.
Of course he will. I remember Peter Hitchens, actually. I was hosting a show on GB News one day and Peter Hitchens was on and people were calling for the resignation of Boris Johnson, and Peter Hitchens said, you don't want him to resign. He said, if you don't like Boris Johnson, try and keep him in the job, because it's only once he's resigned that he will go off and become a very, very wealthy and very happy man.
Essentially, is what he was saying.
Absolutely. Peter got in touch. Thank you, Peter, on email saying, I think anyone that helped bring Boris down should not be allowed to stand, as they have already proved they can't be trusted.
I'm not sure there'd be too many people left if that were the case. I think it's actually interesting. So the only backbencher, well, I suppose there's two backbenchers running, really. Kemi Badenoch, who has recently resigned, and Tom Tugendhat, who was always a backbencher, although he is chair of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee. And I'm interested in this graphic he's just tweeted, the source is Politico. He says he has the highest number of Red Wall MPs supporting him, which I think is interesting for that question of who's going to win. When they're thinking who's going to actually win us the next general election, they're going to be thinking, many of these MPs, we do not want to lose Red Wall.
Yeah, and I think if I remember rightly, he's the only one in the running that didn't vote for vaccine passport, COVID passes, biometric ID under any other name. So in that regard, quite like him there, but anyway, I'm not voting.
Yes, well, coming up today marks the 12th of July parades in Northern Ireland. We're going to be joined by former First Minister Arlene Foster, Dame Arlene Foster, actually. Later on, he'll be covering the parades from 11 a.m. But before that, here's a break.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV. On radio.
On digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know. The latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
A very good morning. It's 10:24 and this is To The Point with Bev Turner and myself, Mercy Moroki. We're on GB News and we're live on your TV, online and radio this morning.
Now, the 12th of July marks the victory of Protestant King William of Orange over Catholic King James II at the Battle of Boyne in 1690. I'm sure you knew that. It was a triumph that secured a Protestant line of succession to the British crown.
Yes, well, let's go live to Dame Arlene Foster in County Armagh in Northern Ireland, where later on today, GB News will bring you live coverage of the celebrations. Arlene, what can we expect from this parade?
Well, hello, Mercy. Join us as the parade has begun here in County Armagh. It's not very hot over here. It's a little bit windy today, but we're delighted to be in the beautiful Georgian city of Armagh today. I'm joined by Gavin Hughes, who's going to bring us the context for the parade today and the history. Gavin, what are we seeing at the moment?
Good morning, Arlene. Well, at the moment we're watching Armagh District, which is the host district for this demonstration here today. Of course, there are 11 districts parading today, and it hopes to be a very, very enjoyable afternoon and day, as far as we can hope for.
Yes, indeed. And today, of course, here in Armagh, it's the largest parade taking place in Northern Ireland, but there are 18 parades taking place right across Northern Ireland. We're just hearing a lovely accordion band, Mercy. I used to play in an accordion band, so I'm always very keen to hear them coming behind me, so it is really lovely.
It's actually Acherbilly, and they'll be providing the hymn music at the field today as well.
Oh, right, so it's lovely to hear them, honestly. And the good thing about a country 12th like Armagh is that you hear a variety of music. We have accordion bands, flute bands, silver bands, and of course pipe bands as well. So it's really lovely to be here in Armagh. And indeed, Dougie Beatty's out and about amongst the crowd. Dougie, are you there?
I'm actually with Charlie and we're just about to go into the crowd in the next few minutes. But as we've came on air, the Lambeg drums have came past us. Of course, they're very famous in Armagh and Rich Hill. They are bathed in history and we'll look at that later on in the programme. But Charlie, what's your memories of the 12th of July?
Just always for years and years and years, mostly in Belfast and Enniskillen, but it's lovely to be in Armagh, and it's just a great celebration of our culture, religion, and you know, it just makes you feel at home, and very proud to be here and delighted to be, you know, covering it with GB News. Great.
Well, for me, it's all about names like Killygally, Leggygowan, and such townlands, because a lot of these lodges are named after their townlands. It's very precious to them.
It is, and it's very, you know, around this part of the world, and Fermanagh, etc. You know, there are tiny little settlements and enclaves of our culture, and we really only see them this time of year. And as you say, it's quite extraordinary. You've driven past several of the signposts on the way to Enniskillen or something, and you've never been in there. And of course, here they are now. So it's great to see everybody.
It is great to see, and we'll be out and about on through the crowd from about 11 o'clock onwards, when we hopefully catch up with a few more townland names. And actually, as we're speaking, one of very large Armagh lodges are passing us now. Turned out very well, but no bowler hats. That's another story for the Armagh lodges. Some of them with the white gloves and bowler hats will be along up to where yous are quite shortly.
OK, Dougie, thank you very much. And I think you're going to continue the coverage throughout the morning after we come off air at 11. It looks like a fantastic atmosphere over there this morning.
I love marches.
I love a march.
They fill my heart with...
I mean, there's nothing like a drum and a marching band to give us audio challenges as well. So good luck to the sound department.
Not ideal environment to try and be doing a live broadcast. Let's go to some of your views before we take a short break. Let's go for Hunter, who says, why are the leadership hopeful putting out glossy videos and publicity campaign when this is ultimately an internal matter for the Conservative Party? The public don't get a say or vote in it. So can they please have a big office party and rash it out indoors?
It's such a good point, Hunter, because I guess what they're doing is, even though they're trying to sell themselves to each other at the moment, ultimately they know it's a longer-term plan, isn't it?
There are people who are running
to us
who
all.
know they don't have a chance of actually sort of being the Prime Minister or even making it to the next round necessarily, but it will be advantageous for some of these people to put themselves forward, to know who their allies are, to sort of get their name out there for a public as a potential candidate for Prime Minister in the future.
Simon says Rishi would be a disaster as Prime Minister, as indeed he has been as Chancellor. I think he's probably banking on the fact that he's going to start saying over and over again, if he becomes Prime Minister, I was the one who gave you your furlough money. I was the one who dished out
magic money tree.
Who planted the magic money tree, and look where it's got us now, I would say back. Caroline has said the Conservatives have proved themselves to be backstabbing fools, lured on by parachute payments and have left us bereft of a political party.
Yeah, it's not the greatest time, let's be honest, to not really have a functioning government. I mean, of course, we still technically have one, but there's a lot of it. It's preoccupying the Conservative Party, this leadership election, and indeed the government and members of the government who, you know, you have somebody, for example, like the Chancellor and Nadeem Zahawi, who's running to be Prime Minister. I mean, he's the Chancellor. That's quite a big job at the moment in the cost of living crisis. And then simultaneously, he's sort of running his leadership campaign. But hopefully it will all be over and done soon. And in fact, on Thursday, that's when we'll have those final two candidates. And then it will go out to the Conservative membership.
It's so fascinating because Christopher said, those who think I will still be voting for the Conservatives are wrong. I like lots of people. I like lots of people.
Comma.
You needed a comma there, Chris. I, like lots of people, will not be voting because of what they have done to Boris. It's so divisive.
Yeah.
The fact that they've kicked him out and now they're all fighting amongst themselves. A lot of you do not like that.
Yeah, I mean, my mum, hello mum, if you're watching, she says, you know, she likes Boris. She even said she misses Boris. She's very uncomfortable with what has essentially been a lot of backstabbing, and she can't see anybody who would necessarily replace Boris. She likes his charisma, and she's not a typical Boris voter. She's not a typical Conservative voter. She should, in theory, be a Labour voter. But she really liked Boris, and so many people were in that same position.
I don't know. I think when he didn't do the last lockdown, October, they started to go for him then, and I do wonder what's going on behind the scenes to have got him out before this autumn-winter happens, when everyone's starting to ramp up the COVID fear again. And finally, the last message, the best one of the morning, actually, from M. I'm glad GB News has emerged as a refreshing news channel. It's like you are talking to me personally. We are, M. Otherwise, I would have switched off or changed channel to watch sports. Keep it up. Well, that would be a terrible decision to make.
Yes, indeed. Well, keep your views coming in. As you can tell, we do get to them eventually. gbviews@gbnews.uk. After the break, we could be hearing from former Equalities Minister Kemi Badenoch and backbencher Tom Tugendhat, who have launched their bids to become the next Prime Minister. But before that, here's the news headlines.
It's 10:33. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date on GB News. The country will have a new Prime Minister by the 5th of September, with voting opening for the new Conservative Party leader tomorrow. Nominations will open today and close at 6 p.m, with each candidate vying for the job needing at least 20 supporters. Ballots of Conservative MPs will then whittle down contenders throughout the week until there are just 2 candidates. The final pair will then face a series of hustings before Conservative Party members choose a new leader. The Labour Party, though, have said it'll put forward a motion of no confidence in Boris Johnson's government today. The opposition have repeatedly said that Boris Johnson should have left Number 10 immediately after he resigned as Conservative Party leader last week. If the vote goes ahead, all MPs can vote on whether the Conservatives stay in power. If the government loses, it could trigger a national election. In other news now, the government has announced a £1 billion plan to rebuild 61 schools. In James Cleverly's first announcement as the new Education Secretary, he said schools would receive state-of-the-art refurbishments. MPs have voted to allow agency workers to replace striking rail staff. It comes after train drivers at 8 rail companies voted to take industrial action in a dispute over pay. The ASLEF union say strikes are the last resort, but they've been forced to act due to the rising cost of living. The Met Office has issued an amber alert for extreme heat for this Sunday. The alert covers most of England and parts of Wales, warning of possible dangers to life or serious illness from the heat, as well as disruptions to travel. This week could see the hottest weather ever recorded in the UK. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound is 1.183 to the dollar. The pound is 1.182 to the euro. The price of gold currently stands at £1,467.55 per ounce.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News, investments that matter.
Hello again, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. An extreme heat warning has been issued for Sunday because of some exceptionally high temperatures expected, but for the rest of today, it's actually turning cooler for northern parts of the UK, albeit temporarily during the next few days, as a cold front sinks south. Now, that's moving into an area of high pressure, which continues to dominate our weather. However, the cold front means that there is a lot of cloud in the sky, certainly more compared to the last couple of days across the UK. It has brought some wet weather to the northwest, but the rain tending to fizzle as it pushes south. And just a few spots expected for Wales, into the Midlands, for example. However, as the cloud comes south, it will impact temperatures, mostly mid to high 20s, perhaps 31 there for London. Much cooler to the north of the cold front at 19 for Glasgow and for Belfast, but sunny skies for northern Scotland, as well as Northern Ireland behind the front, before some showers push in during the evening and overnight for mainly northern Scotland and perhaps the north coast of Northern Ireland. Otherwise, some areas of cloud further south. A cooler night in the north, but still a muggy one in the south, with temperatures staying up into the mid to high teens. Some cloud around first thing across southern parts of England, perhaps even a few light showers. That clears away, and then Wednesday promises to be a largely sunny day across much of the UK. But for Scotland, Northern Ireland, a bit more cloud and a few showers, mostly into the north of Scotland with a keen breeze here, and it will feel cool in the north. Average temperatures for Northern England, Scotland, Northern Ireland, so high teens, low 20s. But in the south, still the potential for high 20s. The heat continues to affect southern parts of the UK, and into Thursday and Friday that heat begins to build once again, and that means that there'll be plenty of sunshine for many of us heading into the weekend, but temperatures once again will become uncomfortable up into the 30s by Saturday.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV. On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Good morning. It is 10:39. This is To The Point with me, Bev Turner, and Mercy Maroki on GB News. We're live on your TV, online and radio this morning.
Yes, now the 12th of July marks the victory of Protestant King William of Orange over Catholic King James II at the Battle of Boyne in 1690. It was a triumph that secured a Protestant line of succession to the British crown.
OK, so let's go live now to Arlene Foster in County Armagh in Northern Ireland, where later on today GB News will bring you live coverage of the celebrations. Arlene, lots of our viewers are getting in touch to say, well done, GB News, and thank you for bringing this coverage. What does it mean for the people of Northern Ireland today?
Well, it's hugely important to cover this celebration today. Normally, the BBC covers this live, but they decided this year not to do that. So GB News stepped into the gap. And here we are in Armagh, the largest demonstration in Northern Ireland. There's 18 demonstrations going on today. And currently, I'm here with Dr. Gavin Hughes, and we've been listening to the sights and sounds of the parade. Gavin, what's going on at the minute?
Well, we've just seen Tory Lodge number 289 go past, which is very interesting. A little village between Killilay and Tynan. And the dingers reference to the Lambeg drums, which had just gone past.
Yeah.
We hear Killilay district, 12 lodges going past now. Very loud, but very good.
I think it's lovely to hear the bands here. This is a flute band, obviously, but there are many different bands on parade today. We have accordion bands, flute bands, silver bands, and pipe bands. Of course, there are a lot of pipe bands here in County Armagh, and we'll see them all on display today.
Fantastic.
So,
It looks...
And in fact, as we're just seeing there now going past, we can hear a lot of flute bands. Of course, there are 67 bands on parade today, Arlene, 150 private lodges and 11 districts. And we're just seeing the tail end of Killilay coming through now, Breckie coming through now at number lodge 311. And you can hear, we've seen the Hamiltonsbourne Silver went past there as part of Rich Hill District. And we've got another beautiful silver band coming up now behind us as well.
And the Lambegs, I'll let our listeners and viewers hear the Lambegs. So we've just had a lovely silver band passes Breckie there, and it's really lovely to hear the silver bands, I think, Gavin. And of course in Country Twelfths we get a mixture of bands, don't we?
We do indeed. And of course in the Country Twelfths you will hear the Lambeg. And the Lambeg of course means little church drum, which is very ironic considering the fact they make a lot of big noise.
Yes.
And you know, and of course the drums themselves, you listen to the drummers' calls on these drums, and they're huge instruments. They're very difficult to control, and so you need a lot of practice.
And it's quite windy here today, and that causes problems for people carrying the banners. I've noticed some of them holding on very tight, Gavin.
Well, of course, they're expensive, paintings, works of art. So if those banners get caught in the wind, you'll notice sometimes that they've got little cords. They sometimes tie them down to the actual banner poles themselves. But the thing is, on a windy day today, they move about, like you'd have seen at the weekend at the Durham Miners' Gala. They move about a lot.
Yeah, and that's the interesting point, of course, because there are many banners on display today, 150 banners on display today. But at the weekend, we had the Durham Miners' Gala, and there were many banners on display there as well, of course, from a different context.
From a different context, yes. And it just shows you that the Victorian parading tradition is alive and well here in the city of Armagh as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's another beautiful silver band that has gone past as well.
Yes, Killilay Guiding Star just going past there as well.
And yet another one coming up. We're having a number of silver bands.
Which is actually quite unusual. I mean, for example, in Belfast 12th, you will not get so many, apart from Miller Memorial, you really will not get a huge variety of bands as you do here. And of course, the trombones. Sort of...
And everybody's enjoying themselves here at the moment. You can see there's a lot of families out, a lot of young people, a lot of children, and they're looking out probably for their fathers or their grandas, and it's lovely to see the amount of people here in Armagh today. And here's some of our flute bands coming up behind, and my goodness, we will hear those very much in the OB today, because they make a tremendous noise, a very joyful noise, but a tremendous noise. Which lodge is this behind us now, Gavin?
Tynan is behind us now, Arlene, where Norman Strong is closely associated with the very, very famous military soldier, of course, Norman Strong and Tynan Abbey. If you can just see, unfortunately, the banner is is blowing.
It's not going to play with us
today.
Anyway, we're going to hand back now to Mercy and Bev, and I hope you're enjoying the sights and sounds of Armagh today.
We are. Thank you, Arlene. Thank you ever so much. Yeah, it's great, isn't it? You know what? I think if you landed from another planet and you watch that, you think, what are these human beings? What are they doing walking up and down like that with the flags? But it's wonderful. It's such a great British tradition. I love a parade. It reminds me of being on a carnival float as a child. You know, even just those community occasions. You know, over here on the mainland, just the community occasions of getting people together, taking out your deck chair and your flask of tea and your sandwiches and just celebrating together, especially after not being able to do it for a couple of years. So we will be back to you at 11 o'clock, Arlene. So thank you ever so much.
Well, the last parade I went to was the Queen's Jubilee, which was incredible. Her Jubilee celebrations in central London.
You were there, were you?
I was, with my daughter. And we can talk about the royals right now, in fact, because the Queen herself will be presenting the George Cross to representatives of the National Health Service at Windsor Castle today.
That's right. The George Cross is the highest award bestowed by the British government for acts of great heroism or for most conspicuous courage in circumstances of extreme danger.
Yes, well, to talk about this is former BBC royal correspondent Michael Cole. Thank you for joining us this morning, Michael Cole. So just explain to us the significance of receiving the George Cross, and especially for an organisation rather than for an individual.
Well, good morning, ladies. Let me just say that I too was at the Jubilee. So I didn't see you and your daughter, but I promise you I was there, and I walked through London for 10 miles looking at all the happy people.
Yeah.
Well, of course, this is a very big deal. It's not just a big deal in Armagh today. It's a very big deal at Windsor Castle. Witness the fact that Her Majesty the Queen and His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales will both be in attendance, and there'll be representatives from all four parts of the United Kingdom representing the National Health Service. And this is particularly important for Her Majesty the Queen, because this Order of Gallantry, the George Cross, was set up by her father, King George VI. And as you said, it's quite rare. In fact, there's only two previous precedents for this, to an organisation to receive the George Cross. First time was at 1942, when the island of Malta became the George Cross Island. It was given the cross because for 2 years it had endured terrible bombing from German and Italian planes, and the people were living in caves, but they carried on serving Britain and looking after the naval dockyard there. And then the second one, going back to Northern Ireland, was in 1999, when the Royal Ulster Constabulary received a joint George Cross. They lost 302 serving officers during the 30 years of the Troubles. And that was their disbandment. The green uniformed RUC was replaced by the police service of Northern Ireland. So this is a rare day, and it doesn't just acknowledge the role of the NHS and its staff during the pandemic, but going way back to its foundation by Anaran Bevan, the Labour government, in 1948. So that's 74 years of achievement. It's a huge organisation, the biggest employer in Europe. And those people who work for it can now say that they are part of an organisation that has the highest award for bravery, civilian bravery, the George Cross.
I wonder whether it will actually mean anything to nurses and doctors. I know that sounds a little bit of a controversial thing to say, Michael, but I wonder whether they will see this as a gesture that they will appreciate, and I'm sure we all appreciate the hard work of nurses and doctors every single day of the year, not just during times of COVID. But I wonder whether some of them would say, you know what, we'd rather have some decent funding. We'd rather have a pay rise. We'd rather have more hospitals than this. Does it smack of a little bit of tokenism, do you think?
Well, I think that's a perfectly respectable point of view, but I actually do think people will cherish it. It's never a bad idea to say thank you. And I noticed that they're even producing sort of cufflinks and jewellery with the motif of the George Cross on it. And I think a lot of people maybe even want to have them on their staff badges. It's a big deal, it's big stuff, this. And I think it's well merited. Of course, there's always an argument for more money, although, of course, some people would say, and quite rightly, we pay our taxes. Why should we always feel grateful? Do we get our full money's worth? That, of course, is the contrary point of view, but it is held by some people. And we've more or less turned the NHS into a secular religion, and we worship them. I think that's really because when we go to see them, we're in trouble, and anybody who will help us obviously deserves our gratitude. But I think it's a good award. I think it's well placed. I think it's well judged. And I do believe that Her Majesty the Queen will very much enjoy and relish the opportunity to give her the award created by her father, this Order of Gallantry, to these representatives. And I'm sure there'll be not just doctors, I'm sure there'll be some young people there representing the staff, the nurses, the people who actually are the backbone of the service.
I also wonder, Michael, whether it will have a sort of personal poignancy for the Queen today, given that she lost her husband not that long ago, who clearly received medical treatment at the end of his life, that she herself has been receiving medical support of late. And to what extent do you think it will be have personal meaning for her today?
I think it will a lot. I mean, I think it was Queen Mary, her grandmother, who said of the royal family, "Listen, we are never tired and we love hospitals." So the royal family do spend a lot of time going around hospitals, and they always have, because it's one of the things they can do, which is non-controversial, non-political. So she's seen a lot, and I should say that she knows a great deal about the health service. It would be impossible if she did not. And she obviously values it. And as you say, she's had her health problems. I think she gallantly is getting on with the job for as long as she possibly can. And I think the people will be terribly pleased to see her there today, standing up and doing her job as she has done all these years. An unprecedented example of service, which of course the very best people in the NHS are too.
And what a beautiful day for it. Michael, thank you so much for joining us on this, what is, like you say, it is a historical day. Very few of these awards given out, and we love having your perspective on it. Royal correspondent there, Michael Cole.
Great pleasure to be with you. Lovely show.
Thank you. Can we win an award?
Well, I don't know.
I don't think we're in line for one for heroism.
Is it heroinism when it's a woman?
No, it's not heroinism. That's something completely different, Mercy.
Just taking heroin. That was just taking heroin.
Oh, I see what you mean.
No, I'm surprised they haven't called for heroinism to be made a thing, because, you know...
Maybe it is. I don't
think it is. But anyway, I'm just being facetious. But let's go to some of your views now. We're coming up to the end of our programme. It's shorter than usual, of course, because Dame Arlene Foster will be bringing you live coverage of those 12th of July celebrations from 11 o'clock. So you can tune in for that. But for now, let's go to some of your views. Tim says, the only two candidates who seem to value this country and its values and traditions and are unembarrassed about saying so were born to parents from abroad. We have been taught not to value our country. How sad. He says bravo to Kemi Badenoch and Suella Braverman.
So quite a lot of you are saying, why aren't you making the point about how unpopular Rishi Sunak is on social media? I mean, he really is getting an absolute kicking. And there have been some videos which have emerged this week, some little clips. There's one of him saying, I think we mentioned it yesterday, that he was talking about, he was very young at the time. And of course, we all say things when we're young, right, that we might regret. But there's a clip of him saying that he has friends who are aristocrats and friends who are very wealthy people. I've got some middle-class friends. I've got some working-class friends who go, well, we're not working-class. Like, that would be ridiculous. But I'd love to know. I want somebody to ask him today, when the journalists get in front of him, what did you mean by that? What do you consider to be working-class? And do you feel differently now?
My issue is not that, you know, I'm offended by that because, you know, whatever. My issue is I'm worried that he was 20 years old maybe at the time and he didn't have working-class friends. Look, I know he was at Oxford and stuff, but I don't know. It's the tone with which he said it. I would find it very odd for or I would find it uncomfortable, shall we say, to have somebody who got to 20 years old and didn't have working class friends.
I don't know.
Maybe that's most of them.
He is. The people think he's a bit slimy. They don't trust him. Stephen has said, just to say, Boris is a star that hasn't finished shining. He will be back. Until then, my support is 100% behind Penny Mordaunt. A lot of you are saying that, actually. If an anti-Brexit candidate is chosen, I will vote elsewhere, but not Labour.
And very finally, Michael says there's been very little comment from the contenders for the leadership party, leadership of the Conservative, regarding their promise to reinstate the triple pension. Treasury has triple pensions locked. The Treasury has already confirmed about 3 weeks ago that will be reinstated. So I suppose their assumption is they would continue that policy in terms of keeping that triple pensions lock, which was suspended during COVID. So that might be the answer for you, Michael.
Absolutely. OK, little reminder, every Wednesday, that is tomorrow, isn't it? We hand our show over to you. It's going to be your show full of your ideas and what you want us to talk about, what you think are the most important stories.
Yes, exactly. So you can get in touch. The email is tothepoint@gbnews.uk, and you can send your ideas about what you want us to talk about tomorrow at that email. That's tothepoint@gbnews.uk. We're going to put all those ideas together and make sure tomorrow's show is entirely dedicated to you.
And get them in now, because we've got an hour off now, because we're going over to Arlene Foster, so we can go and go through them. We can do our little...
We're going to have cake, actually. It's one of our producers' birthdays, so I'm voting for cake. Tomorrow.
There we go. See you tomorrow.
Hello again, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. An extreme heat warning has been issued for Sunday because of some exceptionally high temperatures expected, but for the rest of today, it's actually turning cooler for northern parts of the UK, albeit temporarily during the next few days, as a cold front sinks south. Now, that's moving into an area of high pressure, which continues to dominate our weather. However, the cold front means that there is a lot of cloud in the sky, certainly more compared to the last couple of days across the UK. It has brought some wet weather to the northwest, but the rain tending to fizzle as it pushes south. And just a few spots expected for Wales, into the Midlands, for example. However, as the cloud comes south, it will impact temperatures, mostly mid to high 20s, perhaps 31 there for London. Much cooler to the north of the cold front at 19 for Glasgow and for Belfast, but sunny skies for northern Scotland, as well as Northern Ireland behind the front, before some showers push in during the evening and overnight for mainly northern Scotland and perhaps the north coast of Northern Ireland. Otherwise, some areas of cloud further south. A cooler night in the north, but still a muggy one in the south, with temperatures staying up into the mid to high teens. Some cloud around first thing across southern parts of England, perhaps even a few light showers. That clears away, and then Wednesday promises to be a largely sunny day across much of the UK. But for Scotland, Northern Ireland, a bit more cloud and a few showers, mostly into the north of Scotland with a keen breeze here, and it will feel cool in the north. Average temperatures for Northern England, Scotland, Northern Ireland, so high teens, low 20s. But in the south, still the potential for high 20s. The heat continues to affect southern parts of the UK, and into Thursday and Friday that heat begins to build once again, and that means that there'll be plenty of sunshine for many of us heading into the weekend, but temperatures once again will become uncomfortable, up into the 30s by Saturday.
We are GB News.
We're right across